Lighting, are we okay? Lighting's good. Good morning, y'all. This is Sunday Sermons number 1, take number 4, okay? So, if this is your first time watching my videos, welcome. I am Alex, and these videos are my attempts to pass along the things that have been given to me in life that have served me well thus far, and is the advice and life navigation skills that have been handed to me by my family and my friends, and the things that I've learned along the way, and an attempt to blaze a trail in these tumultuous times in the best way that I can, because I don't think that there are enough people really offering solutions. And, I love a good critique, okay? I love a good critique. I don't think there is anything else in life that is more helpful to personal growth and development than a good critique, okay? So if you got some critiques, put them down in the comments. I'm here for it. Let's do it. And if there's anything that I talk about in this that you would like me to delve into further, put that down there too. But yeah, so this is the very first Sunday sermon. I started thinking about doing these Sunday things specifically, seriously a few years ago, because I started, my man friend is into philosophy, and while I had, kind of done a little bit of philosophy stuff in college and high school and stuff like that, one of his degrees is actually in philosophy. So we have an enormous amount of philosophy books around the house. And during this time of, everything is always unprecedented, right? Everything's a circle and a loop, but it's also more like a spiral, right? So everything has happened before in one way or another, but it happens in a new way every time it happens. So, anywho, philosophy. So during where we are right now, socially and culturally, has really gotten quite uncomfortable, right? And I think everybody feels that to a certain degree or another. And I know that specifically for younger generations, that this is part and parcel of where we find ourselves culturally and politically, right? And it's why a lot of people have frustration with the government. They have frustration with, there's just general frustration and feelings like there's nothing that you can do, right? And I always think that there's something that can be done, right? Because if you sink into that nihilistic hole, then you're never going to get out of it. And I think that's part of how you get out of it, and part of how they've kept us here is it's by design, babes. It's by design. Everything is by design in an attempt to keep and maintain power, resources, and influence by, whether that's individuals or collectives of individuals. That's life, all right? So, but anyways, how I think that we can best, the two single greatest things that I think we can address individually and collectively that will help get us out of this slump are, one, reconnecting with what it means to be an American, right? Like, what are the cultural touchstones that make someone a American, right? What makes it possible for so many different cultures and religions to arrive in one place and live in harmony and abundance, right? Because there are things that anybody that comes to America with the dream of being a capital A American and the birthright that was given to anyone that is a natural born citizen has and shares these common principles, ideals, and beliefs. And that's what makes culture. So the single greatest lie that we have been sold in my lifetime, and I think all of this started way before I was born, but the single greatest lie that has been sold to us in an attempt for a certain group to maintain that power, that control, and that influence is that America is bad and that we don't have a culture. Now, has America gotten itself to where it is through its choices and decisions? Yes, absolutely. As a culture, we are the collective decisions and choices that we make. Pardon me. Whew. Okay, coffee is not going to help, but it do be what we have. So, pardon me. Okay, so the same that you are a collection of the choices, decisions that you make, as a culture and as a nation, we are the collection of the decisions and choices that we make as a society, right? It's why all of the founding fathers and I'm still reading through the Federalist Papers. I'm going to get a hard copy because hard copy works better for me when I'm trying to truly read and remember something versus a e-reader. But Alexander Hamilton talks about the single greatest strength of the American experiment is the citizenry. Now, why did he say that? He said that specifically because every single person that he encountered, whether it was a farmer or, a hobo on the street, to his fellow, congressional representatives and members of government, right? The single greatest through line of everyone that existed in America at its origin was a desire to be educated about what was happening collectively, right? It wasn't just about what was happening in your community, but what was happening at a collective level, and a desire to be a participant in that. Okay, and that's part of what we've lost. If you look at the amount of voter turnout that we have, whether that's at a local election like we just had here in New York City, where we have a city that has a population of about 8 to 10 million people, but only 2 million people showed up to vote. All right? 2 million people out of 8 to 10. And I think in the last election, while we did have a large turnout, compared to what our population base is, I think the average for American presidential year election turnout is only something about 60%. So only 60% of the voting age population chooses to participate. And that's a problem, right? Because those of you that choose not to participate have bought the lie that you don't matter and that your choice doesn't matter, when in fact it is the single greatest thing that does matter. And it's why they try so hard to influence you when it comes to politics and what you believe, and why the new digital age of media, where everything is live streamed, everything is documented. People can scroll back through your history and pull up your actions that, in a lot of times, which is what we're finding out now and what's part of so uncomfortable about where we find ourselves politically, and culturally is that we're finding out that so many of these people that have been held up to us as champions of America and American people are frankly full of shit, right? And that's terrifying. But the beauty of it is that you can go and do this research. You should never take someone else's word for anything in this day and age. You don't have to take the New York Times' word. You don't have to watch Fox News to find out what's happening. Like, you can go follow your local representatives at a, personal level on just about every social media account. You can go onto your local governance website and watch live streams of all of these press conferences and speeches and council meetings and congressional hearings. You can watch all of that streamed live whenever you want. And so you do not have to depend on a intermediary to tell you what's happening. So that's first, is don't ever take anybody else's word for it. Because as soon as you're taking somebody else's word for it, you are relinquishing autonomy. You are relinquishing your ability to navigate life on your terms, okay? So this erasure of American culture and this degradation of patriotism within, the US, right? And we do have a culture. We do have principles, right? And when I was thinking about this, what I kept coming back to, which seems really cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true, is the old school Superman motto: truth, justice, and the American way. And when I say Superman, I'm not talking about like DC universe, like Zack Snyder Superman, okay? I'm talking about old school 1950s original comics, and to me, the Superman that lives in my pop culture zeitgeist is Christopher Reeves as Superman, all right? If you haven't seen that, do yourself a favor. Go watch the original Christopher Reeve Superman and tell me that he is not. Christopher Reeves is that character. He was born to play that character. We are so incredibly blessed that we have documented, for as long as we have this particular type of technology, the ability to watch Christopher Reeve as Superman anytime we want, okay? I take issue with Lois Lane, but like whatever. That's not why we're watching that movie, all right? But truth, justice, and the American way. Now, before I get into anything else, let's put specific definitions on truth, justice, and the American way, okay? So truth is anything that is in agreement with reality, okay? There's no such thing as my truth, all right? My truth, it doesn't exist. It's either the truth or you're disassembling to avoid responsibility and accountability, okay? If you're calling it my truth, no. Somewhere along the way, you have failed to apply accountability somewhere, okay? It's either the truth or it's not. And justice. So what is justice? In all of these concepts I'm going to be talking about in the traditional, like, philosophic, Greco-Roman Greco-Roman, anyways, it'll come to me. So the American way. So the American way is the idea that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness can be accomplished by anyone through the virtue of achievable hard work and merit, right? And when I mean merit, it's not what you think you deserve. I mean merit in that your actions show that you deserve it, right? Because if you put your action behind something, then you are creating momentum, you're creating energy, you're creating mass, and that will accumulate. And it's up to you whether or not that is in a positive way or a negative way. So that's what these Sunday sermons are going to be me kind of discussing and getting into, is this almost spiritual reconnection that I think we need as a culture to what exactly it means to be an American. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to a belief in that truth, justice in the American way. And justice is fairness and moral righteousness, right? And obviously that moral righteousness, specifically in the US, predominantly comes from a Western Christian Protestant belief system, right? And I personally have beef with all religions. I think that religion overall has been the single greatest blight upon humanity, and it is a undeniably powerful tool by which a small group of people exert control and over the masses. All right, and I take beef with just about all of it across the board, unilaterally. I'm not about it. But I was raised Southern Baptist, right? And you cannot avoid the impact that Christianity and Western religions have had on the cultural touchstones and principles and ideals that we hold as being benchmarks of what we should aspire to in order to continue forward in the best way as a society, right? So what am I talking about when I'm talking about those principles and ideals, right? I'm talking about honor, integrity, resilience, respect, and the choices that we make in service to that. The other thing that I think is really important and is kind of a linchpin in defining what it means and what it takes to be an American is the idea of hard work. And hard work as the manifestation of effort that you as an individual put in mentally and through acquisition of skills and trades to put yourself in the best place to find happiness, right? And let's say, and happiness is your ability to reach self-actualization and fulfillment, right? Which is the top little peak of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all right? And Maslow's hierarchy is going to come important later, all right? Don't forget about it. Now, so that's happiness. Happiness is the very tippy top of that Maslow's pyramid where you've checked all of these layers below. You've surmounted each of these. You've ticked those boxes. You've accomplished it. And now you're capable of doing the things that help you feel fulfilled on a deeper level. All right? So, that's why my camera really likes to overheat. So, where were we? Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization. Okay, so now that's what everyone who comes here believes in, right? Is that if you take the helm of your life and your decisions, then you can achieve basically anything that you want to, right? Within obviously the realm of your personal abilities, right? Because the reality is that it's kind of like a video game, right? Everybody was handed a certain set of skills and buffs and what is it? You've got certain buffs and you've got certain debuffs, right? Like some people are really good at technology, some people are really good at art, some people are really good speakers, some people are incredibly talented craftsmen, right? Everybody has a skill that they are that they are naturally more inclined to than others. That's just the way that works, right? Everybody's got a different set of skill points. So, but while working within that, right, the American dream is the idea that regardless of what that is, whatever your baseline skill points are, you can take that and turn that into your version of success, right? So that on the one hand is one of the biggest contributors, I think, to how we find ourselves where we are right now, is this erasure of pride and this, this basically this like psyop to convince us that there isn't a unifying American culture. And that is American culture, right? And the principles that move you in that direction, like honor and integrity and respect and the ability to live your life and say, you know what, my neighbor can do whatever he wants in his yard as long as when he comes out and meets me on the street, he can smile and shake my hand and we can go to McDonald's together, right? Peacefully. I don't care what you're doing over there, bro. Live your best life. If you're happy and you are not, and your pursuit of your happiness is not infringing on anyone else's ability to live their life, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you get up to, okay? Go live your best life, all right? That's the beauty of America, and that is American culture. This balance between liberty and the pursuit of happiness and a high trust society with a broad spectrum of independent beliefs within it, all right? That is American culture. And it's what makes us so appealing to so many different places in people. It's why people are constantly trying to come here, right? So we have to take pride in that again and reconnect ourselves to that and remember that we do have a culture, and it's great to be proud of that. Like, there's nothing wrong with being proud of being an American. Now, on the other part of that, I think the biggest thing that has been detrimental to us is the idea of victimhood and the idea, constantly pushing this victimhood mentality and our refusal to kind of, and a lack of accountability. Okay, let's just put it that way. I think it's, that lack of accountability combined with this victimhood mentality that's been pushed on people, okay? And now, of course, there are people that have awful, terrible, atrocious things happen to them. I recognize that. Life is an incredibly hard and cruel experience. And there are absolutely atrocities that are committed against some people. And there are horrific things that happen in some people's lives. I completely recognize that. Don't think that I don't. But the reality is that if you're watching this, you are privileged enough that you're not a victim. You're not a victim in that everything that's being quote unquote done to you, you have autonomy over, all right? And by accepting this victimhood mentality, you are relinquishing that autonomy to a perceived insurmountable obstacle, right? And that's going to hold you back. So you have to overcome that. But I think those are the two things that are having the single greatest impact, but also that you have the most power to change, right? Like, you can change all of this. You are allowed to be proud of being an American. You can recognize the privilege that you have and still say that that's it. Like, it's okay that I'm privileged. Like, it's a good thing that I'm privileged because it means that the culture that I belong to is prosperous, right? Like, this is not a negative thing. And what becomes negative is where you don't recognize that, right? And you buy this lie of victimhood and that anything that happens to you is done to you and that you have no alternative beyond that, right? I might have to turn my light on here. I'm gonna get it plugged up just in case, because they've started spawning us with trails again. So it went from a really beautiful morning to globalist gray again, which is always fantastic. Gotta love that. But anyways, we were in my Sunday sermon, so we're gonna go ahead and, oh no. Oh. My apologies, guys, but you know what? Authenticity. Plugged in. Oh my God. Okay. We're gonna get it here in a second. I promise. Okay. Oh. Okay. There we go. Ah, oh, beautiful, stunning, fabulous. Okay. So we were talking about accountability and how that, combined with cultivating a sense of what it means to be an American, is what you could, the 1-2 punch that you can do personally to kind of get out of this hole that we find ourselves in, right? Like, that's the whole point, right? Is like, we want to find a solution. Well, you know what, babes? I'm here. I'm trying to hand you the solution. I just need you to take it, okay? That's it. That's all that this is, all right? So, by the way, you know, this is what I'm looking at. I've got my journal here. I've got all of my little notes. So, you know, when I'm looking down, that's what we're looking down at, is all of my notey bits. Okay. So, how do you go about kind of fixing this, right? And what can you do? What can you start doing right now to change this, right? And here we go. All right. So, it starts with accountability, all right? And I mean that across the board, from being accountable for yourself, right? That is the first thing that has to happen. Before you can do anything else, you have to be accountable to yourself, all right? And beyond that, you know, we have to hold others accountable, right? Like, when people break laws, when they are impacting the health of the governing system that we have to exist in order to get this, you know, behemoth moving, right? But beyond that, I want to first talk about personal accountability and how do you get there and why this is so important, and like from a I'm going to tie everything into this, okay? So I'm going to jump right in. So I'm checking my time and recording and everything. So your mind is the only thing that, sorry, my computer, this camera, okay? So your mind is the only thing that you have complete and total control over, all right? Life will never get easier, all right? Life has never been easy. It will never get easier. It's always going to be difficult in one way or another. And the only thing that you have complete and total control over is how you choose to mentally deal with the things that you encounter in life, all right? And the choices that you make therein too, okay? So part of what I think makes the digital age so insidiously invasive is that it is intentionally designed to keep you from living in your own brain, right? It's intentionally designed to keep you from spending time with yourself. Because and it's why people talk about meditation, right? And I think we need it beyond meditation, right? So spending time in your own mind with zero distractions allows you to the mind to examine itself and to think about and to delve into who you are as an individual, right? And you have to be able to effectively view yourself as a series of choices that were that were undertaken willingly, right? Whether they were choices that had a net positive outcome or they were choices that had a net negative outcome. It was all you have to look at it as if, even if you didn't think so at the time, that you made those choices for a reason, right? And then you have to develop the fortitude to look at what those reasons might be in an honest way. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, and it's really uncomfortable. It's why most people don't want to do it, because it hurts. It's painful. It's really uncomfortable and painful to have to look at where you are right now and say, however I arrived here is my fault. Whether I arrived at a positive place or I'm someplace where I'd rather not be. You have to accept that you're there because of you. And it's like going to the gym. It's like working out. Anytime you're tearing a muscle and it has to re-knit itself back together and grow is going to hurt. But that's not a bad thing, right? The bad thing is that when these moments for growth happen and you don't look at them in an objective way as life giving you feedback and criticism and saying, hey, this is an area that needs reflection, right? And we're ready for growth here, right? My dad always said that being put outside of your comfort zone is how you know that you're growing as a person, right? If you're uncomfortable, then it means that you're growing, right? And that's never a bad thing. So it's just about being able to look at it and objectively see where you can improve and like what your personal foibles are that you need to learn how to navigate around, right? And I'll even talk about what some of mine are so that, I can speak to how I deal with certain things. But the positive thing is that this is just as true for all of the great things that happen as it is for the bad, right? It's why the concept of karma is so appealing, right? And I'll talk about that as well. But so anything that you do becomes a habit. And if you accept victimhood as, you relinquish your autonomy to that alleged perceived insurmountable force, then you're letting, wherever that victimhood comes from, you're letting it win. You're allowing that to have more power over your future than you. All right? So, and that's part of why there's that saying of hard times make good men, and what is it? Prosperous times make weak men. All right? And it's because if unavoidable, so when I say hard times, I'm talking about like unavoidable adversity. So unavoidable adversity happens to everyone, right? Like a single unifying unavoidable adversity. This thing is too... Okay. We were talking about hard times making strong men and prosperous ones making weak men, and unavoidable adversity. Okay, so first of all, unavoidable adversity. This single unifying unavoidable adverse thing that any of us is ever going to encounter is death, right? Because death always leaves behind pain. Yeah? That's rude. Please? Really? Bird. It always, no matter under what circumstances death happens, it always leaves behind pain. And Miss Thing. Seriously? And unavoidable adversity is experienced when we attempt... Stop that. Stop it. Here. Have some bits. Here you go. There you go. All right. Hopefully that solves that problem. Okay. Hopefully that fixes that. Bribery. All right, so what makes hard times? So unavoidable adversity experienced while attempting to crawl from one layer of Maslow's hierarchy to another provides unavoidable opportunities for growth, okay? So unavoidable adversity are things like, and I mean, obviously, a lot of this could be avoided, right? But historically, things like famine, drought, Great Depression, that kind of thing, death, like I talked about, those are going to be situations that you can't avoid. But once you get to part of Maslow's hierarchy is that once you get past certain levels, so meanwhile, if you face little to no unavoidable adversity, it breeds excess, maliciousness, and deficiency, all right? So excess is like, this is where your 7 deadly sins come into play. Which, while I don't prescribe to religion, there are certain things that there's a reason why they appear everywhere, right? So you have positive and negative forces that are, the world is nothing but positive and negative forces, okay? That is all that we are, is a series of positive and negative forces that have accumulated themselves into being, all right? And we are the positive, and we are Our lives and our experiences are the accumulation of our decisions based off of positive and negative experiences. Okay? Yin and yang. There's a reason why these certain concepts are universal and have existed in time immemorial. All right? So, excess, gluttony, lust, greed, right? Maliciousness, pride, wrath, envy, and deficiency, sloth. So what exactly is sin? So, because I don't believe that sin is something that is enacted upon you by a, omnipotent malicious force. No, it is the accumulation of decisions that you have made, and the decisions that have been made have been negative. All right? So you accumulate negative, this negativity, right? So because anyways, sin is a violation of quote unquote divine law. All right? So when I'm talking about divine law, I'm not talking about like divine law that's been handed down by some higher being. All right? I'm talking about divine law kind of like in the concept of the way that Marcus Aurelius speaks about it, right? Like the concept of logos. So logos is divine reason, or the rational principle that everything exists under, right? Like there are cause and effect to everything, and kind of like I was saying before, like yin and yang, there's a positive and negative, there's action and reaction. So, which we know based off of laws of physics and things like that, right? It's demonstrated constantly throughout nature and through our experiences. So living in accordance with the source of order in the cosmos is the highest human calling. By aligning with the logos, which is rational principle and reason, individuals can find harmony with nature, endure hardship, and act rationally and virtuously as a fragment of universal reason is housed in every rational mind. Okay? So, and recognizing what logos is requires an acceptance of reality as it is, rather than what you might wish it to be, and then it's the choices that you make thereunto. Okay? So you have to recognize reality as it is, unadulterated. Okay? That's the first. And being able to rationally view the inherent nature of existence and following the drive to perpetuate it means that we get to navigate it and we get to harness it when opportunity presents itself. Okay? So if we are able to look at the way that at ourselves and the nature of existence in a rational way, and we do this really well naturally. That's one of the things that separates us from other beings, is our ability to look at ourselves and make long-term decisions based off of observation rather than just experience, right? Like most organisms need that moment of, oh, I touched the hot plate, now I know it's hot, versus having someone tell you, hey, that plate is hot, don't touch it. And being able to rationally say, okay, they told me that plate is hot, I'm not going to touch it, right? So when you can view things as they are, even if it's a force that feels in opposition to you, if you can view it as what it is, it means that you can successfully navigate around it. Okay? And a lot of this comes back to like karma and Einstein's theory of E equals MC squared, right? Is that, ripples in a pond. Anything that you put out will come back to you. And that's because everything is a wave. Down to the quantum level, everything is a wave. So what that means is that your decisions in the way that you choose to navigate your life and navigate the situations that are presented to you have a long-term, measurable impact on your future and about the likelihood of outcomes being positive versus negative, right? So if you're someone that, it's why people talk about like, well, eventually you'll get your comeuppance, right? And one of the ways that I think we forget is that it can, depending on what your decisions are, your decisions have the possibility of not just affecting you, but your offspring and those that are tied to you in the future genetically, right? And so I think that beyond just what we choose to do and there's a reason for that, right? I think that there is a genetic evolutionary reason why it behooves us to align ourselves with the principles that I talked about at the very beginning, like honor, integrity, respect, and aim for things like resilience, justice, liberty, the quote unquote American way. Like there's a reason why you should aim for these ideals and these principles, okay? And it's because long term, it behooves you to adhere to those because of what that will bring back to you, both you and where it will set your genetic offspring up in their lives, right? So, and that's part of why we make such a distinction between these violations of rational principle like excess, maliciousness, deficiency, all of these 7 deadly sins, right? Why we differentiate between those and ideals and why you should aim for one versus the other, right? It's because of what it will bring back to you through your actions. So, and what does all of this mean when it comes to like Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like, so why do I keep talking about that? So it's because I think that our current predicament and why I think that personal accountability and everything that I've talked about up until this point is so important is because without us knowing it, we have been bumped down on that hierarchy and don't even know it, right? So first off, in the future, maybe I'm going to make like a little, poster that has Maslow's hierarchy on it so that I can have like a little visual aid here. But for right now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, for anybody that doesn't know about this, first of all, you should just go look it up. It's a brilliant distillation of what motivates people. And at the very bottom of that are your classic physiological needs, okay? So there are 4 steps to this pyramid. I have my little notes here, that's okay. And the very bottom of this pyramid are your physiological needs, okay? And physiological are like the physical, right? Like the tangible, like you don't want to be starving, you need a home, like those are your physiological needs, right? You need water, you need food, you need shelter, you need to not be scrabbling in the dirt in order to feed yourself from day to day. That is your very bottom of the pyramid, all right? And I think that we can collectively agree that that bottom of the pyramid is not a problem for anybody in the United States. It's not. If you're homeless, if you're poverty level, if you're on SNAP, whatever, no one in the United States has a true... Here we go. Another one. All right. So no one that currently lives in the United States is really facing any meaningful struggle when it comes to the physiological stuff, okay? We can agree to disagree about, why certain people are in poverty and why certain people are not, but at the end of the day, the reality is that nobody in the United States starves to death because they can't find food, okay? Like, that's not... People in the United States aren't starving to death, all right? They're not, having to fight rampant dysentery because they don't have potable water, right? Like, they don't have access to clean water. Like, most people that are homeless in the United States are homeless due to choice, right? And, again, that's all, but everybody has the opportunity in the United States, no matter where you are, to no longer be like, you don't have to hunt for water, you don't have to hunt for food, you don't have to hunt for shelter, okay? That's just the reality. So that physiological base of that pyramid is taken care of, all right? It's part of why so many people want to be here, is because that's already really firmly established, like from a sociocultural perspective in the United States, all right? Now, where we start to kind of get tricky these days, in my opinion, and again, I think this is all, what makes this so insidious is that it's by design. There are sects of the ruling powers of our time that are intentionally doing these things, like I said, in order to maintain power, control, influence, and resources, okay? So, I know that's terrifying, but buck up, babies. I'm telling you, these are solutions, okay? You're gonna be able to do things actionably in your life that are gonna make a difference in this, okay? I promise you. So, now, the second tier is social. So having friends, having, and this is called your emotional needs. So that first layer are your physiological needs. And the next two layers, they're two separate layers, but they're technically both your psychological needs, right? So the first layer of psychological needs that we need to be fulfilled in order to be secure and happy, right? And to function to the best of our ability are social. We need intimacy, we need community, we need to have a sense of belonging, we need to have friends, and we don't have that anymore. And there's been a really intentional erosion of community spaces, public spaces, and moments where we interact with each other in real life in a social, community, friendship, relationship building way. And I don't mean that in just a sexual sense. I mean that, and of course we all know that that's been an absolute seventh, eighth layer of hell, right? Is the modern dating scene. But again, a lot of that is because these natural arenas where we were able to encounter people in a real life sense and build a sense of friendship and community with others in real life, not just digitally, are really hard to find and come by these days. And personally, I'm trying to figure out how I can offer solutions for that, which, when I have solutions and when I've hopefully gotten all of that together and I'm able to do that, we'll let everybody know. But And that's why I think we're seeing this return to young people going to church, right? Is because church and religious organizations are one of the remaining arenas where people can get together and feel like they have an actual community, and to feel and to have an excuse to get together and socialize and spend time with each other and build these interpersonal relationships that are necessary as human beings for us to have a feeling of success and happiness and fulfillment, right? Like, you can't be fulfilled if you don't have that layer first, right? So we have to find more of these opportunities to interact with each other and foster these interpersonal relationships, right? It's why your grandparents being members of the Moose Lodge and the Elks Lodge and, you know, all of these different social clubs. It's why social clubs were an integral part of our culture for a really long time, and have historically been, is because we want to find groups that we identify with. And YouTube is a really good way to do that, but we have to learn how to do that and take it from just digital into real life, because there's no replacing the organic growth that happens on an individual level when we get together in person, okay? So that's part of it, and that's gonna, you know, reinforce friendships. That's gonna bring about, you know, more fulfilling romantic relationships. It helps you find a sense of belonging, and these are the things that help root you to your community and help you feel like it's worth putting in effort, right? And that's part of why I think everybody feels so frustrated and upset, is that we don't feel rooted in our lives anymore. We don't feel like we have a direct connection to the communities that we live in and the people that are around us and the society that we exist in. And so we have to become reconnected to that, all right? And the layer above social in our psychological needs is esteem, right? So once we have friends, we have intimacy, we have community, we feel belonging in a group, we have to feel dignified. We want to feel respect. We want to feel achievement. We want to feel like we have purpose and recognition, right? And it's because we want to feel valued and having dignity and pride. And although pride is also can manifest itself in a malicious way, having dignity and self-respect is, you cannot find happiness if you have not already established a well-grounded sense of dignity and self-respect, okay? And then beyond that is where a lot of our culture and society has kind of tried to convince us that we're at, which is this manifestation, self-actualization at the very tippy top, right? So fulfillment and self-actualization is the very tippy top of that pyramid. And that means that you're able to create things, beauty, unity, aesthetics, exploration. You know, it's when we are given the freedom to move beyond just the skills it takes for survival and start cultivating interests within ourselves that allow us to express our individuality through creativity and beauty and exploration and all of these higher evolution concepts, right? You can't get there if you haven't gotten the rest of that figured out, all right? And the problem that we're kind of coming up against right now is that social media and the current political and socioeconomic climate, because we as a society, and this is pretty true globally as well, like there's never been a time where we have been so successful and had so much abundance as a species, right? And then at a individual, like national cultural level, the United States is still the land of plenty. It's why, again, so many people are trying to come here. And it's why gatekeeping that is so important, is because we have so much abundance, and because we have so much that provides that physiological safety, that it's easy. And with that ease comes complacency, right? And because we feel like buying things and being able to have that latest Starbucks bear mug is going to indicate our perceived what do we want to call it? Our perceived status within this hierarchy, right? We think that like being able to have that bear cup means that we've reached that self-actualized, like we found happiness, right? But we know that that's not what happiness is. Happiness is not owning that bear cup, right? It's not going and purchasing the latest version of whatever Skims has decided to drop, right? Like that's not happiness. And by being convinced that it is, we have not realized that we no longer have those two emotional layers of needs fulfilled. Like most people don't feel like they have dignity. They don't feel like they have respect. They don't feel like they have purpose. They certainly don't feel like they're being recognized. We don't have a lot of friends. Intimacy in both, platonic and romantic sense is really eroded now. We don't feel like we have a sense of community, and we don't feel like we belong. And when you look at it that way, it makes complete sense that there would be this overwhelming sense of nihilism, because if you are being told that you ought not feel the way that you do because the illusion of self-actualization and happiness is provided by the surplus of the physiological abundance that we have, then you're not recognizing that those really important psychological and emotional needs are not being met. All right? So that's what part of this personal accountability is about, right? Is accepting that, you know what? We know that these things have not made us happy. So what can we do to look at this and learn how to navigate in the system as it exists? Because it is what it is. We live in the age that we live in, and as Dickens says, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times, right? And as my granddaddy says, it doesn't get any better than this, okay? It doesn't get any better than this. So you work within it or you don't, and it's up to you, all right? But my final little note on this is that it's easier to hone these virtuous tendencies. So, okay, hold on. The honing of virtuous tendencies is more difficult in times of abundance because the lack of unavoidable physiological hardship, okay? So if you are not having to struggle to meet your basic needs, like, say, pioneers, right? Like, if you're not in a Conestoga wagon constantly, like, fighting off for your life to like make it to the next day, it means that you have to go out and kind of look for these opportunities for growth. You have to be more proactive in what you're doing to grow than you would if these things are just naturally coming at you and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Like if you constantly have to like be hoeing a row and feeding some cows and, you know, planting turnips and looking for clean water and fighting off the enemy, then it's going to naturally build certain tendencies in order to survive, right? Now, this is, in my opinion, compounded by that illusion of fulfillment while your psychological needs have been eroded, right? So we have this illusion because of that bottom surplus, because we have such a surplus in our physiological needs, right? It allows this perpetuation of the illusion that, you know, we have fulfillment when those core layers between fulfillment and your physiological needs have been erased. So, all right, I think we've done a really, we've gone pretty far on this. But anyways, that is my little Sunday morning sermon on what I think, diagnosing what I think the root of where we're at is, and defining some of these things and kind of getting a collective understanding of this baseline, all right? And starting to get, I want you to start thinking about what I've talked about and reflecting on it personally, because we're going to start talking about what I think you can do and how you can make personal changes to slowly but surely start accumulating more positive spooky particles than negative spooky particles, all right? But yeah, I think that's enough for this particular Sunday sermon. Have a good one, y'all. And again, I really hope that this is meaningful and helpful. And if it is, let me know how. If it's not, let me know what can be done better. Like I said at the beginning, I love critiques. Let's bring it on. I know that there's some controversial stuff in here, but life is nothing but, life is a fight, all right? It's just reality. That's the truth. And it's just a matter of figuring out what kind of toolkit you want to accumulate for yourself so that you can make the most of it. All right? So here we go. Get ready. And I'll see you on Wednesday. Have a good one. Bye.